Hey everyone, Travis here at the very end of the second day of semifinals with Royal Club coming out ahead against OMG in an epic 5-game match. Again, as of yesterday, same as yesterday, I've got Karen Moser, Kelsey Moser, goes by both names on Twitter, very confusing, and Froskurinn, of both of them of legendary China Talk fame. And this is great because we just saw two Chinese teams play each other, so we're going to go into it. First thoughts on what we just saw, Froskurinn.
I think a lot of the majority of the Chinese experts were predicting OMG to win, and it was kind of always a question of Cool and Going versus Korn and Cola. And initially, Korn and Cola had the game of their lives. They had an amazing set, and Cool really failed to perform, especially in that last game. And I think that's really what it came down to. Insec, of course, can't doubt him, had an amazing performance on both Fiddlesticks and Pantheon, so bringing out multiple champions in a 5-game set. But really, their solo laners really stepped up here.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think we saw, at least for the first 3 games, both teams, I think, played pretty well. So I don't want to just say that, StarHorn's win was because OMG completely screwed up. I do think that OMG's players didn't, really hit their skill cap, but it was a really, every single pick was pretty contested, so it was just really, really tricky in that early setup of picks and bans. Also, both of these teams play, very snowbally styles, and I think that was really evident, so.
Well, maybe you guys can also add a little bit of historical context, because these teams, of course, meet all the time over in China. So is this, what people should expect whenever they see these guys come head-to-head, or how's this game, or how is this match in the context of the previous clashes between these two teams?
So if you know anything about kind of StarHorn Royal Club or Royal Club and you watch LPL, they actually didn't look nearly this good at the beginning of the season. I'll try to keep this really brief, but they kind of gutted their entire roster, and they've been on the rise ever since. And it is not an understatement to say that Royal Club, StarHorn Royal Club, played the best that they've ever played coming into Worlds. OMG has always been very consistent, very high, but they kind of just started to slump at the very beginning. When these two teams clash, I think they had a, 8-10 record if you count outside tournaments going to StarHorn Royal Club. So StarHorn did have the 2 games set on them, but I think it was in
XCS.
XCS, yeah. But otherwise, it's always been this really explosive. Like Kelsey said, it's very much about a snowball type of style. You saw all the tower diving. StarHorn, they play the same style, whether they're 5K gold up or 5K gold down. It's always going to be fast pace. So.
Kelsey, we've now seen StarHorn Royal Club, though admittedly very different rosters, make it to the finals twice at Worlds. What do you think that means, especially with the fact that they were able to do it with 2 players who don't speak Chinese or Mandarin?
Well, first of all, it's not even the same team name. Royal Club Hangzhou and then StarHorn Royal Club. And it's just Uzi. Uzi is obviously a very good AD carry, and it's really weird because he gets this buff when he goes to Worlds. It's interesting because he's always in contention for the top, but then he goes to Worlds and it feels like he's very definitely the best AD carry in China. I think that it's just they play this style very well of protect the Uzi, raise the puppy. But it's interesting because I feel like if they had been playing the same kind of style as last year, they would not have done as well at all. It's very much evolved, and I think I give a lot of credit to Vaikal, their coach, and Chris for kind of working with that roster and finding things that work. They have a Chinese coach and a Korean coach, and they focus on different aspects of the team. And I think they found a way to make both their roster that speaks 2 different languages and their coaching staffs that speaks 2 different languages work really well. So.
Froskurinn, we've already started to hear rumors of other Korean players possibly going to China. Is this what we should expect to see, these hybrid monster teams show up in the scene and maybe even make it to Worlds next year, and we're just going to start seeing this combination of people who can't even speak the same language but can apparently dominate at Worlds and on the international stage?
I mean, obviously, it's already evident Insec and Zero finding a lot of success here speaks to kind of the Korean experiment, as you would like to call it. But, I mean, yeah, with the 1 team per organization, that pretty much loses a lot of people jobs, a lot of really talented people, so they're going to start outsourcing, looking for higher paying salaries, better positions. I know NA's probably getting a few of them, probably going to see them, I would hope, in EU, but definitely in China, for sure.
Of course, referring to the rumors that Kespa and OGN and Right Korea looking to make a one-team per organization rule, possibly freeing up a lot of players in the process. I don't know. Kelsey, any thoughts on Chinese aggression? Because I know that's kind of the buzzword. I feel like what we saw today was pretty aggressive. What do you think today's matches? Because there's so many people that tuned in, I'm sure, around the world, and LPL is out of ignoring Garena, like with these big four, the guys that get the least attention. Do you think that this is like, hey, if you really like Chinese, or if you like what you saw today, this is what you can see all the time on LPL?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is definitely a showcase. Like this series, I thought was really good up until like maybe the last game, and fourth game kind of questionable. I think it showed a lot of the strategic evolution of the Chinese region, as well as showcasing the Chinese aggression, which was always a fun time. OMG was much more controlled and slower paced in their wins. I think that they got a little impatient in some of that like Chinese we must kill it all. And their third game went through because I think that if they had kept that controlled like split push sort of very patient style, but instead they decided to engage repeatedly and awkwardly. But also, if you really do like Chinese aggression and the Chinese strategic developments, you can watch them all through next year on twitch.tv/LPLEN and find coverage for it on ongamers.com.
Figured I'd let her give the plug. That's a good way to sign up, but I do have to say that we have to talk about the finals. In just a week now, we're going to see Samsung White go up against these guys. I know you're both pretty big fans of the Chinese scene and of the Chinese teams, so I'm sure that right now you'll tell me, no worries, World Club has this. They're going to win the whole thing, humiliate Korea in their own country. Is that what I'm going to be seeing next week?
Completely. It's going to be a 3-0 to StarHorn Royal Club, obviously, and Sek's going to, take his throne back. No, White, I would love for a Chinese team to take. It's unfortunate because I feel like stylistically, OMG was better suited for competing against White. I feel like StarHorn Royal Club is like mini White, but just not as good. Like their laners across aren't very strong, which of course when you're competing at White's level, that's pretty much, the best players and positions across the board. So that's just unfortunate there. But I mean, StarHorn, they proved that they're in the matchup between OMG, the better team consistently. So they made it out and hopefully they do a good showing. One game's all I want.
Kelsey, last year a team with Royal Club in the name, as you've corrected me, well, it was just not a very good final. Is this going to be a better final than last year's, or are we going to go in, fill this giant stadium, and then everybody's going to walk out being like, well, it's kind of cool I got these cloaks for free that they gave out or whatever,
I just want to say that right now I am in quarterfinals and semifinals predictions. I am currently 2-4. I got the TSM and Cloud9 games correct. Okay, so I predicted the Samsung victories there, but
Samsung White to win? Is that what you're saying? You're going to predict for Samsung White to win, so it'll be an upset?
I'm just saying that I think Samsung White will win. I think it's a pretty clear-cut thing there, but I've done really terribly, so do not take my word for it. I think that, like Froskurinn said, we're going to see StarHorn try to pull the same sort of thing against White that White does much better. Only, I guess in that last game, I kind of got flashbacks, Vietnam War flashbacks from the previous series because we saw like OMG repeatedly get caught and kind of play a little bit like they don't normally, and we saw StarHorn repeatedly just keep that pressure on and make that game really fast. That's what White does, except White made significantly fewer mistakes in their games against Blue, so fun times.
All right, final question. What do we look at next week? What's the matchups? Is it like the bot lanes with Imp and Uzi, or UZI, however we want to say it, or what should we look to next week to see, where the battle's going to be and how, StarHorn Royal Club might be able to hold their own?
I'll make a clarification. When speaking with Chinese speakers, they pronounce it Uzi, because if you say Uzi, like you're not saying the last letter, which is why they say Uzi. But technically, yeah, it's for the gun, so you can say it both ways. But that's why it's said that way. As far as the predictions and the matchups, I mean, obviously everyone wants to see Uzi and Zero go up against Imp and Mata. Mata, of course, I think probably the best player in the world right now, especially for his position. Imp is just as explosive, but Uzi is, I think, a really fair contender for what he's been able to do. That said, they haven't really faced a matchup like White has. So we'll see, but that's where I want to look. I want to look at the bot lane and see how those AD carries match up.
Bot lane's Kelsey.
Yeah, I think that's going to be where they're the closest. As we sort of covered, they do what White does, except their players across the board are a little bit, more than a little bit weaker. But I think Uzi and Imp is an interesting matchup. I think Mata is significantly stronger than Zero, but it'll still be interesting. So.
Very good. Well, there we have it. Thank you guys so much for the complete breakdown of today and the preview of maybe what's in store for us next week. Guys, we're done here at semis. I'm going to go interview a player, but we're going to act like I'm done here at semis. All the games are done, and we're going to make it over to finals in just a week. We're going to have all sorts of coverage and try to create some pretty cool content in the week in between. So stay tuned for all of that and more at ongamers.com.